Okay, welcome you all. My name is James from Varsity Unlimited Tutors. I know that some of you might have attended the lecture before that we just did for management accounting, but I also know that there are some of you that might be seeing me for the first time, because I know that there are some people that do business law that do not do management accounting. I think the guys that are doing BCom financial management and BCom accounting. So this might be your first time seeing me this semester. So I welcome you all to your second year. So what I'm just going to do, just like I did an hour ago, I'm just going to highlight a few things in 5 minutes, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page in terms of what we are doing. And then I'll proceed with our business lecture. So if you have heard this information before, just be patient. It's just for the other guys that were not able to attend the first class that we did for management accounting, since we're a mixed group. All right. So I'm James from Varsity Unlimited Tutors. I'm a private tutor who specializes in assisting students with their education. Right. So in your second year, you're going to notice some important dates that you need to be aware of. Date number 1 is the webinars. The Mancosa webinars or Mancosa lectures are starting too much. So please make sure you attend these lectures. Please make sure that you find time to attend these lectures. They'll be beneficial to you. Then date number 2 is 8 April, where you're going to do your KCQs. That they're going to start on the 8th of April. You're going to be given 2 weeks. And then you've got your case studies that are due 9 April. Case studies that are due 9 April. And then lastly, you've got exams that are due 11 June. All right. So in terms of your assessments, you've got 3 assessments that you need to be aware of. The first assessment, you are all familiar with this one, because this is what we did in our first year, which is the KCQ. It's a quiz where you answer 10 questions. Right. So this is the one that we said 8 April. So it's going to be from 8 April, I think, up to 20-something April for about 2 weeks. Right. So please make sure that within those 2 weeks, you do your KCQs. We are going to also assist you with them within the classes that we are doing. Then assignment number 2 is going to be a case study. Right? I have an example. I'm going to show you the example of the case study. But assignment number 2 is a case study, which is an essay that you're expected to write. Usually, the lecturer will ask for 2,000 words, and you ask you to use Harvard referencing. I'm going to teach you how to do all of those things, so you do not need to worry about that. So this one is June 9 April. This one is different from the KCQ, right? So unlike the KCQ opens on the 8th of April. You can start doing it then. But this one, you have to submit on the 9th of April, which means that you need to do it before it is due. And then when it becomes due, you log in and you submit, right? So that's the case study assignment. And then lastly, the exam. Of course, you know how the exam goes, just like you what? Just like you were doing. Then for those of you that will be joining our classes, the way we are going to set them up is as follows, right? You're going to pay 700 Rand for each module that you're joining in, and then you're going to get assignment assistance, which is basically we are going to host a class just like this one, where I will go through the assignment and highlight to you the solutions for the assignment. That these are the solutions, this is what you are supposed to do, this is what you are supposed to include, right? And then you can go and write the assignment. And then I'll even give you a simple answer. You cannot submit my answer. You cannot submit my answer. That is plagiarism, right? But I'll give you a simple answer so that even if you struggle, you can see the way that I've written, and then you can paraphrase in your own way or something like that, right? So you're covered for that. Then number 2, we are going to do the KCQ together in the class, just like we did in our first year, right? Where we would meet up, we do the KCQ together. I show you the answers, everyone gets 10 out of 10, right? We are going to do that again in class together, right? Then number 3, we are going to send you pre-recorded classes, right? So I'm going to go through, for example, business law. There's a unit on contract law. I'm going to record myself explaining the whole issues about contract law, and then I'm going to send you these recordings, right? So the reason why they are not live lectures is because, remember, I'm also teaching the year ones, I'm teaching the postgrads and whatnot. So I might not find time to do the live lectures with you guys. But in order to make sure that everyone is happy, I will do pre-recorded videos and I'll send them through. And then you watch them in your spare time. So some of the recordings will be about the units. Some of the recording will be me explaining past exam papers and their solutions. Then in May and June, we are going to do exam preparation classes where you come together, live audience, you can ask questions, we can discuss all of the different issues, we come with our past exam papers together. Right. So that's what you'll be getting from the 700 Rand that you'll be paying for the different for the different modules. And then we are covering business law. Let's see. Project management, guys, you're covered for all your modules. BCom accounting, you're covered for all your modules. BCom financial management, you're covered for all your modules. So if you're not doing any of these three under business law, if you're not doing any of these three, if you have other modules that are outside the ones in BCom financial management, BCom accounting, and BCom project management, we can still assist you. We can still assist you. It's just, you just have to give me a call and then we can talk on a one-on-one basis. I can highlight to you how we can assist you at the end of the day, because we are more than capable of assisting you. It's just that we don't have the resources to cover every single module in terms of the lessons, right? So I think I'm covered with that. I can go ahead now. So now I want to talk about business law. That's what we are all here for, unless if someone with a question before I start talking about business law. Yeah. Please make sure you're muted. Unless if you have a question, please make sure that you're muted. All right. Just confirm for me if you can see my slides which say business law.
Yes, we can see, James.
Yes, we can see, James.
All right, that's wonderful. If you can see, then we can start. All right, so I will also be taking you guys for business law. So for second day, I take you guys for management accounting and for business law. All the other modules, you're going to meet the different people that are taking you for those modules. I know yesterday you met with Susan for organizational leadership. I think this Saturday, you're going to be meeting with Listen and some of the other guys that will be taking you for the different modules. All right, so let's see, business law. Okay, let's see.
Hi, James.
Yes.
Sorry, man, to disturb. I just want to understand, are you going to give us more of like the days when we will be taking classes? Say like Mina, I'm doing business, I'm doing BCom accounting and I have course management, tax and financial and business law. Like you're going to give us a day when we will be doing which module?
Yes, I'll provide the days.
Okay, thank you.
I'll definitely provide the days. Yeah. For now, because we are not yet officially started, I'm just picking up days here and there. But once everything is said and done, we will provide. Because like I said, there's so many of you with so many different modules. It's unlike year one. Year one, there were like only 6 modules. So it was very straightforward to create a timetable. But with so many different modules coming through, we have to be a bit sensitive about the way we put through our dates. So we'll provide the final dates once we know who's doing what, and the numbers that you guys are doing, and then we can provide you the different dates for the different things that we are doing. But like I said, definitely the videos will start coming through. As soon as you guys make your deposits and whatnot, the videos will be sent into the groups, each and every group. But in terms of the date where we're doing the assignment class, the date we're doing the KCQ and whatnot, I'll provide that to the guys that have done the deposits. Just make sure that by 22 February, you have at least, you don't have to pay the full amount. Remember, I'm one of those guys who can talk. You can just say, look, James, for now, I've got 300. I want to put 300 as my deposit. I'll add you to the groups. And then you can then pay it little by little as we go. Just make sure that you have at least made a deposit so that we can add you to the groups and you don't lose communication. Was starting around the 19th of February, 20th February, that's when we start providing the official dates for everything that we'll be doing. All right, contract law and business law. Right. So business law in each and every business that you're operating within a country such as South Africa. In a country such as South Africa, there are laws that govern the nation of South Africa that you have to follow through, whether you're an individual or whether you're a corporate entity. Right? There are certain laws that you have to follow through. So within this study guide, we will teach you the different facets of law which affect the business activities that you conduct. We are going to talk about what is called contract law, which is the law that governs the different contracts that you have as a what? As a business, because you're going to have contracts. Contracts with your suppliers, contracts with your customers, contracts with your employees, and etc. So what governs the different contracts that you have? We're going to talk about it. We're going to have the law of sell. If you are selling something as a business, there are certain rules that govern the way that you sell, rules that govern the way that you advertise, rules that govern the way that you provide prices, rules that govern the rights of the consumer within a sell. So that's something that we are going to discuss and tell you what you need to be aware of, right? If you're in a business, you're going to have property. Whether you're in the property business or you're a different business, you're going to deal with property. So when you're dealing with property, you're going to deal with leases. So we are going to talk about the lease law, right? We're going to talk about the issues, the rights of a tenant, the rights of a landlord, the duties and etc. responsibilities of each of the different parties to the lease agreement. Then we're going to talk about insurance, because that's another important part of business. Whether you as a business are taking insurance or you are selling insurance, there are certain facets about insurance that we need you to understand. Then lastly, we are going to talk about labor law, because you employ people within your organization. And what are the different laws of the land that govern the relationship between the employer and the employee? You need to understand them. So we are going to be talking about that. All right, so let me remove my video here so that we don't disturb each other. All right. So today I want to introduce business law. We are not going to, it's a very long chapter. We're not going to do all of it. I think we're going to do maybe up to 1.7 or 1.6. We see how far we go, because I don't want to tire you, because business law is a very long chapter. All right. So the first thing that we will need you to understand is, why is the law important? Before we even discuss what is the law, why is the law important? What is the relevance of having law within a nation, right? So within each and every nation that exists, there are three spheres of influence. There is the political sphere of influence, the economic sphere of influence, and the social sphere of influence. The political sphere of influence are the people that govern the activities of a nation, right? The economic sphere of influence is the money side of the economy, how the economy operates. Then the social part of the economy is us, you and me, within the economy, the community within the economy operates. So these three spheres of influence, they interact with each other. And whenever these three spheres of influence interact, there is going to be problems. There is going to be conflict, right? So when the community interacts with the businesses want to make money from the community, but the community wants products from the business. In order for the businesses to make money from the community, they might abuse the community by selling them products that affect, by selling them products that might not be healthy, right? Because they are selling them cheap products because they want to make a profit. But the law can then regulate the relationship that exists between the economy and the community, so that the products that are being exchanged between these two spheres of influence are what? Are exchanged in an orderly manner, right? Politics can abuse its power, right? And put their will over the people, or put their will over the business. Over the businesses. Politicians can come and say, no, we want to increase the taxation to 80% tax on whatever income that they're earning. That is not fair. But the law can come through and put in a regulation that says that every 5 years, we can vote new politicians into power. So because of that regulations, then the politician will not abuse the power that they have, unlike the issue where there was no law before. Right. So the relevance of having law is that it regulates behavior, which means it therefore removes the conflict that naturally could have arisen, or resolves the conflict that naturally could have arisen when these three spheres of influence met or interact. Then number two, the relevance of law is standardization. So what do we mean by that? We're saying that the law gives you what is acceptable. What is acceptable when a person wants to be married to another person? What is acceptable when a person enters into a contract with another person? What is acceptable when a person is driving on the South African highway? The law will say you have to drive on the right side of the road or on the left side of the road, which means that you can be rest assured that you're not going to face oncoming traffic when you're when you're driving, because everyone is driving on the correct side of the road at the end of the day. So it standardizes the behavior of the individuals, showing that each and every person has got certain duties, obligations, and responsibilities that they have. Otherwise, if they do not meet those duties, responsibilities, right, it becomes an offense for which they can be jailed, pay a fine, right, at the end of the at the end of the day. So that is the reason, or the relevance. We need the law at the end of the at the end of the day. And where does the law come from? Right, in South Africa specifically, where does the law come from? So if you look before we had the settlers in South Africa, when it was just the Bantu-speaking people and etc., right? We had our own law, the indigenous systems that we had in place, and we call this the customary law of South Africa. So that's a source of law, or that is where law originally originated from within the land. Then during the period 1652 up to around the 1800s, we are now the settlers coming in, the Boer community coming in from Dutch, coming in from Holland. And they also brought in what is called the Roman Dutch law, right? So this is Roman law, which is mixed in with Dutch origins, right? So that's the Roman Dutch law. So that's also a source of law within Zimbabwe. If you go into the course of law right now, they will still talk about the Roman Dutch law. Then later on, during the colonial period, which is the 1800s up to around 1994, we now had English law in operation. So that's another part in terms of the history of how law originated within the country. Right. So all of these things, you will notice when we go deeper into the different contract laws and etc., you will notice that there are certain principles where we are telling you that this comes in from Roman Dutch law. This comes in from English law. This comes in from the Constitution and etc. Right. So it therefore paints a picture for you of where the law is coming from and how it was developed over time. Right. Then now we want to talk about the key concepts. So these key concepts will help you to understand the terminology in terms of what we are talking about in terms of business law. Right. So the first key term, of course, now let's define what is the law, right? We are going to talk about what is business law, but let's define what is the law. So when we're saying what the law, we're just looking at the rules, right? The rules that govern the behavior of people, right? Remember, we said 3 spheres of influence. There are people in politics, there are people in community, there are people in business. So the law governs the relationship between the people in all of these different institutions, whether the institution might be the state or whether the institution might be a business. The interaction between the state, the businesses, and the community. Law governs that behavior, highlighting what is acceptable and what is unacceptable when it comes to that behavior. So that's what the law is. Now, specifically for us as we study this study module, right, we are going to talk about business law and we're going to talk a lot about contract law, right? So business law now, these are the laws or the rules that then govern the relationship between people and anything that has to do with commerce. Whether it is a rental agreement, leasing, whether it is an insurance agreement, insurance law, whether it's an employment agreement, labor law, right? Whether it is any form of selling that we are doing, contract law and etc. So all the laws that govern commercial matters or business matters are commercial law, right, are commercial law or are business law at the end of the what? At the end of the day. Then within business law, there are now different facets of business law. Like we're talking about insurance law, contract law, leasing law, and etc. That we won't go through all of the different ones. But the one that is of interest to me, that we'll be talking about, I think this will be for next week or so, is a contract law, which governs the relationship between people when we're exchanging different goods and services between each other. So that's contract law. But we're going to go deeper into it in our next week, right? So that key term, I remember we're talking about key terms, key concepts. Another key concept is what we call the state, right? So you'll notice we are going to talk about what we call private law and public law, right? And we won't say public law is law that involves the state and the people, right? And private law is law between individuals. So when we're talking about the state, we're talking about the government in itself, right? So the state of South Africa has got different categories, right? It has got the legislature, right, which is your parliament, the National Assembly, right, and the National Council of Provinces. So that's your legislature. These people are the ones that are responsible for the what? The creation of the law of South Africa, right? They create the law of South Africa, the legislature. Without the legislature, we don't have a law. They're the ones that vote on the issues of creating the constitution, vote on the different roles, different laws that you see. Any law that you see in South Africa, it comes from the legislature of the what? Of the country, from the parliament, because parliament is the one that votes in the different bills that we see as a nation being what? Are being used, right? And then we have got the executive. The executive are the people that implement the law. They are the top executives of the government. This is your president and the ministers and etc. They take the law that has been voted into government by the what? By the National Assembly, and then they implement it in the different ministries that they have. If it's the Ministry of Education, then he implements whatever laws have been implemented there. If it's the Ministry of Home Affairs, then he implements it there. So that's the executive. They are the implementers of the what? Of the law of the what? Of the country that parliament has given us, right? And then finally, we've got the judiciary. The judiciary now, these are the people that are responsible now for settling the different disputes that exist now. If the state is got a problem with a specific individual, or a specific individual is a problem with another person, they then go to the judiciary to help them settle the matters. So they are the custodians of the law, making sure that the law is being applied to settling of the different disputes that exist. So within the judicial, we've got different courts of law, right? So this is actually according to their importance. At the very top of the country, we have got the Constitutional Court. So the Constitutional Court is the highest law within the nation, right? And then just below the Constitutional Court, we've got the Supreme Court of Appeal, right? And then below that, we've got the High Courts, and then below that, we've got the Magistrate Courts. Then there are other courts that have been created by the nation, but they're not that important, but they've been created and they exist. So for example, you might have heard of maybe I would call this one, the maintenance court, right? You might have heard about the maintenance court, or maybe the small claims court. So those are courts that exist, but they have got smaller jurisdictions. These are the main ones that you need to know as a what? As a student. And you should know their order, that the Constitutional Court is the highest authority, followed by the Supreme Court, followed by the High Courts, and then by the Magistrate. And then you should know the different roles of the three arms of government, or the three arms of the state. That is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. What are they actually responsible for at the end of the day? I hope everything is clear. If it's not clear, you can just highlight to me. Right. So that's number two, the state. Right. Then number three, I'm sure most of you have heard the word rule of law being talked about. Rule of law. So when we're saying rule of law, this is a concept that says that a country should have a constitution. A constitution is the law of the nation. The supreme law of a nation is the constitution. Then every single person Whether you are in the state, the government, or you are a private individual, all your activities are governed within the law of the Constitution. So it means that all laws are subordinate to the Constitution. All activities, all directives are subordinate to the Constitution. No one is above the Constitution. That's the rule of law. So this therefore means that you are not going to have problems because the government and the citizens are all seen as equal before the law. You can challenge the actions of the president of South Africa by going to the Constitutional Court because of the concept of the rule of law and highlighting that the actions that he has undertaken, they are null and void according to the Constitution. They should not have been undertaken according to the what? According to the Constitution. So this, therefore, is something that is very, very important that you just need to know, because as you are looking into business law, the actions that you do as a business, if you think that your actions do not are against the Constitution of the land, even if they look like they are all right according to contract law, even if they look like they are all right according to the Consumer Act, but if someone challenges you, they can go to the Constitutional Court and say that you have done something that is against the spirit of the Constitution, hence you are in the wrong. Although according to the Consumer Act, you were correct. So you always have to be cognizant of that when you are getting into business decisions, that the actions that you're undertaking, are they upholding the spirit of the Constitution of the land? All right. Now, we want to go a little bit deeper now. I think we've highlighted the appreciated things. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Now, within business law, you are going to notice that there are different types of relationships that you're going to see, right? There are what we call private legal relationships, and there are what we call public legal relationships, right? Okay, I'll have to correct my notes here. I think I made it vice versa. Right, so apologies for that. I'll have to correct it. I think I made it vice versa. But there are public legal relationships and private relationships. So when we're talking about public legal relationships, we are saying that public, the state has to be involved. The government has to be involved. So whenever the government is involved, they are trying to protect everyone within the nation. So what the government usually do is they have directives and they have licenses. So for example, if you are driving on the road, the directive is you should drive on the left side of the road. And then they issue you a license to say you're a good driver because you drive on the left side of the road. The moment you start driving on the right side of the road, on the wrong side of the road, let's use the word wrong, on the wrong side of the road, number one, they're going to take away your license. Then number two, because you have gone against the directive, they're going to go to court with you. And they're going to penalize you and put you in jail for your actions. So that's a public legal relationship that you have with the state or with the government. So that is usually falls what we call public law, because the interest of the law is to protect the public. And always there is always the state, the person who arrests you, the person who charges you, the person who is against you in a public setup, in a public relationship, is the state. That's the fight that you're going to have. You are fighting with the state at the end of the day, because the state wants to protect the interests of the people that are within the nation. And usually, public law, this is where you go to jail. Right? This is where you get beheaded if we're still having, I don't know if we still have it or not, but this is the concept is very severe. The penalty for going against the public is very, very severe. This is where we even talk about criminal law. This is where criminal law comes in also under public law, right? Then we have private relationships, private legal relationships. These are now relationships between people that does not involve the state. So the relationship between me and you. So for example, you pay for I advertise and say, I've got a class. You pay for the class, and then I don't do the class. Then there's a problem now between the two of us. You can then take me to the court of law under private legal relationships. So the state is not involved. The government is not interested, but the court will help settle the dispute between us as a private matter. So under private law, it's very rare for you to go to jail under private law. Under private law, usually you get fines, you get directives for you to fulfill your obligations, right? Or you pay for damages and etc. Right? So that's under private relationships or private legal relationships. I hope that's clear. I'll go to the next one. Right. So within these relationships, whether it's a private relationship or it's a public relationship, whether it's private law or a public law, right? There are certain what we call legal objects. There's where we want to get to. But before we get to that, we will start by legal objects, right? So legal objects is, we are saying that there are certain rights and duties that we're going to talk about. The legal rights of an individual, right? Or the legal rights that come as a result of the law. But all of these rights and duties, they exist because of legal objects or things that exist in nature that by law can be protected. Right? So for example, property, right? Property, your house is a property, can result in a legal right or a legal duty, right? Or incorporeal property, right? For example, intellectual property, things that cannot be seen, right? They can also result in what? In a legal duty existing or in a legal right existing. Where someone says, this is my intellectual property. This is my house according to the law. You have no right to what? To enter my property without my authority. These rights, duties, and obligations are as a result of a legal object, right? Something that is an object, but that exists because of the law at the end of the what? At the end of the day. Or because of the contract that we ended. Or maybe someone is a minor, right? A minor, someone who's below the age of 18, right? They've got a right to food. They've got a right to accommodation, right? So it's not something that you can touch, but that right exists. The object therefore becomes the performance or the exchange of services. They're saying, I have a right to be fed. I have a right to education. I have a right to all of these different things. But all of that is arising, right, as a result of a legal object. So that's legal objects. Now, these legal objects will then give the person a legal right. Now we want to talk about legal rights. So objects, these are different things, whether it's a physical thing or not a physical thing, whether it's a natural thing or a non-natural thing, right? So we said physical thing, for example, a house, a car, right? Something that is not physical, right? For example, maybe my electronic money. It's not physical, but I have a right to my electronic money. Although I cannot touch it, I have a right to it, right? Or intellectual property, I've designed something, right? It's not physical, I've designed it, I've designed a building, right? I have a right to what? To get the reward for designing my building. Or whether it's a performance, it's a contract, right? It's a performance, we entered into a contract, you're supposed to deliver something to me, so I have a right to ownership of what you're supposed to deliver for me. Or I am a minor, because of my personality as a minor, I have a right to education. That's legal objects, right? But these legal objects are then creating rights. These rights that I'm saying, my right to education, my right to ownership, my right to performance of a contract, these legal rights can be distinguished or categorized between two things. It can either be a real right or a personal right. It can either be a real right or a personal right. If I say something is a real right, I'm saying it's a right that is attached to a corporate or to a physical thing. So, for example, the right of ownership. I built this house. I bought this house. I have a right to ownership of this house. I have the right to rent this house out to other people and get the income from it, right? It means that if you come and occupy my property without my authority, I can take you to the law and say, I have the right to decide who stays at this house because I am the owner of this legal object. I have the right to decide. So that is a real right. Anything that is tied into a physical or a corporal material or a project, right? So that's a real right. Then there are what we now call personal rights, right? A personal right is the right to performance. It's no longer a real right. It's right to performance. I'm saying that we entered into an agreement, you and me, and I said, I am going to work for you. Now that I have worked for you, you are supposed every single month to log into your FNB account and pay me some money. I have a right to the performance of you paying me money monthly. That's a personal right because of the contract that we entered into. Or, for example, I was talking about the minor. Because you decided, to have me as a child, I have a right to education, right? So each and every year, you should send me to school. If you cannot send me to school, make a plan. Whether talk to the government or whatever, but make a plan because I have a right to an education as a child. Right? So that's a personal right, the right to performance, the right to an action happening, or even the right not to be harmed, right? For example, I cannot be walking down the street there and you start slapping me. Why are you slapping me? Right? So that's a right to protection. I should not be harmed when I'm walking down the street. So that's another personal right, the right to performance. Right? So those are the two different legal rights that you can see an individual having. Either it is a real right or it is a right towards the performance, a personal right. Okay. I think I've already explained most of this stuff. Let's see if there's anything that I've left out. But I encourage you to go through even your study guide, to go through some of these things, just so that you're able to see the difference. I think everything is fine here. Now, remember where we started from. We started defining what is the law, and we talked about business law, right? And after we talked about business law, we highlighted that there is a state in South Africa, right? We said that there is a state and there's a relationship that exists, whether it's a private relationship, public law, and public relationship, private law, and etc. Right? And then we went a step further and highlighted that there are different sources of law or a history of law, where we're talking about, the common Dutch law and etc. So the law that we have and the courts that we have within the nation and the different relationships that exist, all of that culminates into this specific word, legal liability. So I was saying that me, because I have a right to a legal object, which is the house, the right to ownership, a real right to ownership of the house. If you then come and destroy my house by mistake, you then inquire legal liability. By law, I can get you to court for you to pay damages. For the what? For the mistake that you made on my house. Or because we have agreed a personal right in contract for a salary to be paid every month, and you decided not to pay my salary, I can then have a what? A right to go to the court of law and make you legally liable to pay me that money at the end of the day. So that's what legal liability is. It's just the obligation that arises out of either a public relationship or a private relationship. That liability, if it's a public relationship, it exists because the government can go to the court and can get you fined, can get you imprisoned because of the actions that you are doing. For example, if you go on the road and you're traveling on the wrong side of the road, or you're speeding on the road and you're damaging other people's scale vehicles on the road, you are liable, liable to a fine or to imprisonment for the actions that you've done. Right? Or if it's a private relationship, if it's a contract and you have not done what you were supposed to do in a contract, you're legally liable to pay me damages for that for that specific contract. Or my own personal property. If you damage my own personal property, you are legally liable by the law of derelict to pay me damages for the property that you've damaged. Or maybe, for example, trademark law. For example, under trademark law, if I have a trademark, I've got my own intellectual property, and you go on and use my property and you get rich because of my property. We call that unjustified enrichment. You are using my property and they're getting rich. Yes, you did not damage my property, but you're using my property and you are getting rich. That's unjustified enrichment. I am entitled to go to a court of law and make you legally liable to pay me your income or your receipts that you got from what? From that specific thing, right? So that's legal liability. So this is the very most important term that you should know as a business person, right? That this thing that I'm doing, does it result in me becoming liable or legally liable for what I'm doing? So when we meet next week, or when I send you the video next week, I'm going to be talking about the sources of South African law, right? What are the key sources of South African law? But in brief, I try to put them in order, but it's not exactly in order. It's not exactly in order. I tried, but I know it's not exactly the correct order. Right? There is the Constitution, which is the law of the land. Any other law in South Africa is subject to the Constitution. It might be opposite of the Constitution. The moment we know that it's opposite of the Constitution, it has to be repealed because it is not in the spirit of the Constitution. The Constitution is the top law of the country. Then on top of the Constitution, we have the legislation. The legislation are the bills that the parliament makes into law. So for example, if the parliament signs the Consumer Act, that becomes the bill, that becomes legislation. If they sign the Labor Act, that becomes bill, that becomes an etc. Right? So that's a legislation as it is signed for by parliament. Then there's what we call judicial precedent. Judicial precedent is the situation whereby a judge makes a ruling. If a judge says this person is wrong, this person is right. If another judge rules and the facts are similar, they can just say, I am ruling according to what that other judge said. They might not even check why that other judge said so. They can say, because that other judge decided like this, I am also going to decide like that. That's judicial precedent, right? Then common law now is what we were talking about earlier. Roman Dutch law, usual also customary law falls under common law. English law. These are laws that have not been codified, but generally everyone knows. They have not been codified into law, but generally everyone just agrees. It's very rare these days to talk about common law because most common law is now found within legislation, it's found within judicial precedent, and is found within constitution. But it's just something that we just know, that we, over time, we generally agree that this should not be done, right? So it's difficult to really explain what it is, but we'll talk in detail about it next week. Then customs, basically what we generally believe is correct. If we say respect our elders is what we believe our custom is, then that becomes law, right? But I know it's funny, but that's basically what it is. It's just what we generally do. And we've agreed that the custom of our nation is this. And it becomes a what? It becomes a law, even though sometimes it's not codified within a particular way. And then customary law, I think, is self-explanatory. It's just law that we have that came from our grandfathers and grandmothers and our ancestors and etc. Then finally, foreign law. Foreign law, this is the law outside of South Africa. For example, the law that is being practiced in the United States. We can use it in a case in South Africa, although it's very rare. But if we don't have local laws in South Africa, we might borrow a law from another country and use it in a judgment at the end of the day. Right? So that brings me to the end of what I wanted to talk about this week. So next week when we meet, we'll discuss a little bit more about the sources of law, and then we finish off with unit number 1 before we start talking about our contract law. Are there any questions for me? I know it's quite a lot of information that we talked about, but I believe if you find more time, you can just rewatch the video. Any more questions for me? If there are no questions, then it's fine.
No questions.
All right. Thank you guys for coming in. Please, let's make sure by 20 February, for those that are interested, you have made your deposit so that you do not miss out. Otherwise, let's see each other next week. Good night.
Night, James. Thank you.
All right.